So we have the full spoilers for chapter 28 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, and almost every important character is featured in this chapter and a lot is happening. This is going to be a long one, but let's just get into it. So the person on the cover is Sumire and the title is New Power. She also has Boruto's sword, which apparently is now fixed, and Boruto has a new ability, but we're gonna get to that part soon. Now the side text on page 1 says, Inojin trains hard to master a new jutsu for the bug battle. What is the power of the jutsu? That will be the key to the operation. We also get to see an image of this jutsu and it appears to be just a mass of chakra in a single area. But we're gonna get more information on this soon. Now Koji then says, well done. It's mostly taken form. Inojin replied saying, yeah, more or less. Boruto then chimes in saying that's pretty impressive. Can't believe you actually pulled it off. Inojin then says, hey Boruto, let's make this clear. I'm only doing this for the sake of the leaf. I'm here for Himawari's sake. It's not like I've forgiven your betrayal. Boruto then says, I haven't acknowledged you either. Get this straight. If you ever make Himawari cry even once, I'll shave that stupid head of yours bald. Boruto then teleports away using FTG and Inojin then says, hey, why did he just say something like that? Like, who is he to talk? He's the one who wrecked the entire Uzumaki household. And of course, he's talking to Kashin Koji. Now we then skip to Konohamaru's interrogation with Lord Kobu, and Mitsuki then walks into the room. Kobu then says, so you've arrived. Come in. Konohamaru, you're dismissed. Return to your duties. Now, as I pointed out in the review for chapter 27, Sai seemed to be picking up on the fact that Konohamaru was communicating with someone using the mind transmission jutsu. And this confirms it since he phones into the sensory team and pretty much questioned them on what was the most recent communication involving Konohamaru and the third party. The sensory team then said, understood. His last communication was the scheduled check-in last night. There's no usage record for the last few minutes. Sai then squints and says, is that so? Thank you. And by the way, he's now looking at Konohamaru and Konohamaru is looking back at him. So there's gonna be something there. We'll see what happens. Now Mitsuki is the one in the hot seat and Kobu says, now then, Mitsuki, child of the infamous Orochimaru. And this is kind of funny by the way because I never made the connection. Sasuke worked with Orochimaru as a villain in the prior series. Everyone knows this, at least the important people. So Boruto leaving the village with Sasuke and Mitsuki being the son of Orochimaru, I do wonder if they kinda always suspected Mitsuki and Orochimaru working with Boruto, but I might be reading too much into this. But yeah, Kobu then goes on to say, when Boruto escaped, you were the one closest to him. The situation at that time, I have a few questions for you based on that. Now, we then switch to the part everyone is here for, of course, which is Boruto and Sumire's conversation. So Sumire gives Boruto back his sword and says that the blade was reforged from the original materials and reshaped to maximize its strength and sharpness. Boruto then says, the guard is mostly the same, but the rest has been almost entirely renewed. Sumire then says, that's not all. Boruto, the Uchiha-style Hagoromo activates the moment you grip and move the hilt even a millimeter, and the blade has been designed to automatically maintain the jutsu afterwards. Boruto then pulls out the sword and notices something strange. He then says, this thing, only slightly, but is it absorbing my chakra? Sumire then says yes, but don't worry, you won't need to focus on maintaining the technique, because the effects of Hagoromo will continue on their own, as long as your chakra keeps flowing. And by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, Hagoromo is just the process of cloaking one's sword in their chakra. So it's pretty much what Sasuke does all the time and what Boruto does as well when he's using his sword. So it's not a new ability per se. Now Sumire then tells him to be careful because if someone not registered touches the blade, it will drain their chakra all at once. It will totally wipe out their chakra. Boruto of course is shocked by this and says, "What?" Sumire then goes on to expound on this and says, "It is a safety measure in case it gets stolen by the enemy." She then tells him that she registered his and Sasuke's chakra, and she also registered her chakra because she had to work on the blade, obviously. Boruto then says, "I see. So it's a scientific ninja tool with a built-in safety feature." Sumire then pops in saying, "Also, one more thing. The sword is made with a special kind of material," then proceeds to not expound on that, at least not right now. Now of course I'm gonna make a dedicated video on this, but in a sense Boruto's sword is now stronger and sharper. It also has the ability to automatically absorb chakra, which allows him to use Hagoromo without even thinking about using it. That feature can also be used as an offensive type of ability as well, because it also sucks every bit of chakra from someone who isn't registered to use it. So this can be effective against someone like Jura who loves to touch Boruto's sword for some reason, which is likely how they're going to defeat him, but I guess we'll see. And also, this is just a sneak peek into the new vid, but I do believe the reason why this is possible is because she infused it with Hashirama cells, and that is the special kind of material she referred to in this page. And that also explains why Kawaki can't shrink it, because of course, Hashirama cells are filled with life force energy. So if one was to infuse them into the blade, Kawaki can't shrink it because of that life force energy. They can also be used to siphon chakra and bind it, which is why it's very useful to suppress the power of the Biju using wood release. So everything is connected and makes sense, but I could be wrong, we'll see. By the way, I did make a video 2 days ago that goes in depth on all the abilities Boruto will receive from his merger with Mamushi, which includes wood release, which is very interesting given the topic, and also ice release, which also plays into Momoshiki's ability to create different entities. So I do recommend checking out that one after this one. But yeah, moving on to the next page, we have Shikamaru saying that is the reason, which implies that he just told something to Shikadai, which is the person he's speaking to. Shikadai then says, "The Divine Tree clones, you're saying they'll attack." Shikamaru then says, "Yeah, Konoha will soon become a battlefield. We're going to launch a mission based on what we just discussed." Shikadai then says, "Even with that bastard Boruto on our side, he's the one who killed the Seventh. He's a criminal. When did you forgive him? How can you still call yourself the Okage?" Shikamaru then goes on to yap, saying that when I took on this position, I made a vow in my heart to never bend my own convictions, no matter what the circumstances, just like the Seventh did. That is why I'm doing the same now, to never submit to power and never make compromises. To protect the leaf, I follow my own beliefs, believing I'm making the necessary decisions. To confront the Divine Tree, Boruto's cooperation is absolutely essential. If you're not convinced, that is fine. You don't need to join this operation. This isn't an order, but in that case, don't tell anyone what we just discussed. Then you decide for yourself. Shikadai seems to be convinced by the speech and says, "No, actually, give me the order." Himawari's joining in too, right? In that operation, just like Sarda. They just want to support Boruto. They're the kind of fools who became ninja just for that. Chocho won't just leave Himawari alone like that. Me and Inojin feel the same way. Putting personal feelings about Boruto aside as a shinobi. When it comes to the Akage's orders, we'd stake our lives. Now we then switch back to Inojin and Kashin Koji, discussing prescience. Inojin says, "But still, if you know what's going to happen, then why not just explain things in more detail? Why are you only giving us bits and pieces?" Koji then says, "For example, if you knew you were going to die, would you still have gone to face Jura for Himawari? Maybe you would have hesitated if you knew. Maybe your legs would have frozen and you couldn't move. And as a result, if you hadn't died back then, that power Himawari awakened wouldn't have awakened at all. What I'm trying to say is, the future I saw will change, even if only slightly. The more ideal the future development is, the more people are better off not knowing it. Even something told with good intentions can cause things to progress in an unintended direction. Those who know fragments of the future, In other words, the thoughts and actions of us singularities often have a huge influence on future developments. For better or for worse, the more singularities arise, the more the future branches into complexity, making predictions become extremely difficult and prescience will completely lose their advantage. To whom and what should we reveal, and how much? To move toward the ideal future, judgment must always be made with caution. Inojin then says, well then, deliberately not saying much just means, in other words, if I just go along with the flow like this, is it okay to assume it will turn out for the better? For now at least. Koji then says, whether your choices was right or not, you won't know until you see the outcome. I believe I've passed on all the necessary information. How to fight the enemy before you must be left to Shikamaru and Boruto. So let's change it, shall we? At the very least, a future where Ada and Himawari die. We then get a page that shows this alternate future where Ada is absorbed into one of the divine trees and Himawari is dead and Inojin is holding her in his arms and crying and stuff. So yeah, that's an alternate future that was supposed to happen or maybe could still happen, but I guess we'll see. Now we then get to the Avengers Assemble moment and Shikamaru then says, can you hear me? This is Shikamaru, and he's speaking to everyone. And this is being broadcasted to Sarada, Chocho, Inojin, Mitsuki, Boruto, Kawaki, Amado, Ada, Damon, and I'm sure I'm missing someone else, but pretty much the main cast. He then goes on to say, let me say this up front. This conversation is unofficial and will not be recorded. Therefore, only those hearing my voice right now will be members participating in this operation. There are two main selection criteria. First is, at the very least, in this battle, someone who isn't hostile towards Boruto. The village still sees Boruto as an enemy and a target for elimination. During the mission, it is expected there may be movements to hinder his actions. Each member must remain cautious of the enemy and support Boruto's movements within the village. Second, this concerns the communication previously mentioned, a new technique from Inojin which uses a private channel via mind transmission. Inojin himself then pops in saying, being able to talk remotely is the same as regular mind transmission. What is different is that it uses the people linked through the transmission as receivers. It can also detect the vibrations of objects around them. Each vibration emitted by an object has its own frequency. It finds the Mamushi's locations, which chakra detection can't. It does this by identifying the vibration's frequency. We aim to pinpoint and track them. Chocho then says, so what exactly does that mean? Shikamaru then says, no need to overthink it. Inojin and I will grasp the enemy's numbers and position. We'll then relay that to you. That is all. However, there aren't that many people who can be communicated with simultaneously using mind transmission. That was the second reason we chose the current members. Then we have Shikadai, thinking to himself saying, that Inojin, since when did he know a jutsu like that? Shikamaru then says, that was a long-winded intro, but now we'll go over Bug's abilities and how to deal with them, and then we'll explain the specific mission plan in detail. Now it seems like some time passed in between then and now because we have Shikamaru then saying, damn it, it's several days earlier than we were told. Koji then says, that's just how it is, fate has already begun to change. Kawaki then says, you bastards, just you wait. And also, just on the Kawaki point, I was correct in the spoiler video where I said that it seems like Kawaki is hopping off a table. Maybe he just received his power up because in this chapter he was laying on the table in his shirt. Now it isn't clear if he did get the power up, but he was on a table, he got off the table and put on the jacket. So I guess we'll see what happens in the upcoming chapters. Now then switch to Ada and Damon, and Ada says, so gross, I feel like throwing up. And Damon says, don't worry about it. No way am I letting him near you, sis. I won't let him lay a single finger on her. Now Sarada's also there in the room and she then says, I'm heading out for now. But Shikamaru stops her and says, wait. Due to the nature of his ability, there's a chance the split up bugs will scatter over a wide area. Team 10 is heading to District D, east side, and Team 7 will stand by for now in District B, which is the north side. Shikamaru then checks in on Mitsuki and says, "What's your status over there?" Mitsuki then says, "It doesn't look like I'll be released anytime soon. Should I force my way through?" Shikamaru then says, "No, not yet. We don't want to provoke them carelessly. Wait for the right moment. If we act, it will be during the village's chaos. We'll think of something on our end too." Shikamaru then goes back to the broadcast itself and says, "Listen, Mamushi's target is Ada. Ultimately, it is to the east of District A where she is. Be ready to move at any time. Boruto will use Flying Raijin to jump to each site. Kawaki will respond to the situation and assist where needed." Now then switch over to Mamushi himself, who is now in the village just walking around, and he says, "You're saying that you know where Ada is? We're the ones who'd like to know that." And by the way, he's talking to some random villagers who then go on to say, "Who the hell is this love-struck old man?" One of Mamushi's clones then says to that clone that killing him's your business, but don't go wrecking the buildings. I don't want to get scolded by Jura later. The random villager then says, "Huh? The same old geezer? A clone?" Mamushi then shrugs and says, "If you don't know, you're useless. Sorry for the trouble, bro," and then just walks right past him. The random guy then says, "Wait, who the hell are you?" And that's when Boruto swoops in using Flying Thunder God and chops Mamushi in half. He cuts his head and then cuts his neck, I believe, which is done in one swoop, by the way. He's just really fast with it. And I just want to say, this of course is a divided Mamushi, and I didn't mention this before, but he has 8 clones active. So Mamushi isn't really that smart at the moment. Now this is the final page that we have for the spoiler, but it isn't the final page of the chapter because apparently we're doing ethical spoilers going forward, which I think is actually good. So we don't actually have the full spoilers, but we have most of them. I think we have 5 pages that we haven't seen, which I think is good, so you guys can go read the official chapter to get the full context when it comes out. And this is of course a very good cliffhanger anyway, you know, Boruto swooping in and chopping up Mamushi, so I think it works out pretty well. With that said, that is it for the video. If you guys liked it, drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and also consider becoming a member. And also remember to watch the video on Boruto's evolution with Mamushiki. It should be on the screen somewhere.